Hi, everyone. Very warm welcome to all of you joining us for this live virtual session. My name is Jerry, and I'm part of the People Matters team, and it's a delight for me to welcome you all for this discussion this morning. So, we're here to talk about accelerating productivity in a changing job market, and we'll also reflect on how you can build your HR tech stack. And we're bringing this conversation to you in partnership with HONO. We've been hearing about a lot of news around job cuts of late, right? And we're also hearing news of economic gloom and maybe some economies more than others. And companies are really trying to reprioritize what their talent priorities are and what their HR tech priorities are, right? For example, in the manufacturing sector, we see that the attrition has risen to about 8.2%, while the growth has just been about 1.6%. And research is actually showing us that more companies are sort of easing some of their hiring efforts, they're scaling back some of their flexible working arrangements, maybe even sometimes even reducing their skill development initiatives. But some of these initiatives may be at odds with what the employee wants and their priorities, and it may impede businesses from building that trust and connection with employees. So we'll have a chance to reflect on some of these things, and we are very excited for this conversation that we're bringing in partnership with HONO. And I'll just quickly introduce our speakers for today. We have with us Madhu Subramani, who is the General Manager for HR at Bridgestone India. And Madhu is an experienced human resources professional with a demonstrated history of working in the automotive industry. And as head of HR at Bridgestone Automotive India, he's responsible for business partnering, leveraging existing systems and processes in organizational effectiveness, talent management, capability development, and enabling a synergized, cohesive, and result driven work culture. Thank you so much, Madhu, for taking time today and welcome to this session.
Thank you. Thank you.
We also have with us Randeep Singh, who is a co-founder and chief operating officer at HONO.ai. And as a grandmaster of operational excellence, Randeep is the thread that runs across and through the organization's fabric, meticulously crafting the perfect weave to deliver customer delight. And he comes with a background of MBA in HRM and personal administration. He has over 21 years of experience in consulting, pharma, retail, oil and gas, and steel sectors. And Randeep complements his mastery of HR tech with industry specific requirements, molding bespoke products at HONO. And we're great to have you with us, Randeep. Thank you for joining us.
Pleasure, Jerry. Hi, Madhu.
Hi, Randeep. Hi.
Fantastic. So, a quick announcement for our audience. If you're joining us, you can ask questions at any time during this session. We will take questions at any time. You will find a chat window at the right hand side of your screen. You can use that to enter questions, comments, reflections that you may have. And we will take it up at the end of this conversation at our audience Q&A. So stay tuned and keep posting your questions. All right, so with that, we'll jump right into the questions. My first question, really, to both of you, Madhu and Randeep, is really your reflections on what you're seeing around you, right, in terms of any major shifts and how it's sort of impacting some of your priorities, right, within your industry and within your business. So, Madhu, can we start with you?
Yeah. So thank you, Jerry. And very glad that part of this very pertinent discussion that we have to have. How do we actually marry productivity and accelerating employee productivity and building the HR technology which could aid this productivity? So yeah, I mean, if you see, as you said, uh, there has been a lot of disruption which actually happens in the automotive industry. So the industry which I come from. So I head HR with Bridgestone India Automotive. We are into manufacturing anti-vibration products, which are used in car applications, most of the car applications, and we do some business with also some commercial vehicles, and the products are also used in some of the other applications. If you see broadly, I've been one mostly with the automobile space, and yeah, I've seen the industry evolve, and I've seen the highs and the lows over a long period of time. And yeah, if you see today, as I said, disruption, there are a lot of things which actually happens in the industry. Of course, when we talk about automobile, obviously you'll have tech, you'll have all the other industry also having a kind of impact on the automotive industry. And if you see, I'd like to maybe mention some of the key disruptions which are happening. See, one is obviously you will all know there is a huge shift from the IC engine to the EV, where most of the companies have started moving into the EV space, building the infrastructure for that, and rolling out new models, and that has a huge impact on all the auto component industry, because the industries which has been built over a long period of time have been supplying to manufacturing parts which could actually support and supply to most of the OEs, have now need to rethink their strategy in terms of how do we kind of evolve into this new space. And the second point, as you know, is that today, with the economic slump, the cost competitiveness is one of the key factor. And when we talk about cost competitiveness, of course, we need to link it directly to productivity, not only the employee productivity, also the assets productivity and your facilities and all that. So obviously, when we have like, for example, a lot of people who are supplying components to customers, cost is one of the important factor, without obviously compromising on quality, delivery, and other key factors. And yeah, more so because another key point is that as we become, actually most of the global players are there in India, and how do we actually compete with these companies in terms of winning projects, and make sure that we are very competitive in the market. So all this, if you see, the large disruptions which are happening at macro level in the business, all this has a direct impact on the talent. So it all boils down to how do we actually attract, engage, develop, retain the right talent. And as you said, we are at about 8.9 to 9% attrition. And today talents get poached very easily. So as we get an influx of the Gen Z talent, and loyalty, of course, is something which is not seen very well and truly. So talent implication is that how do we actually attract, develop, and engage and retain this talent? And this is where I think HR technology, and how do we actually build a technology that supports this talent management piece. I think that is a key factor. And for sure, we have experts like Randeep, and who roll out good products which would actually help folks like us to kind of leverage this technology and make sure that, no, we give a superior employee experience to our people. Yeah, thank you.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you so much, Madhu, for sharing that. Randeep, what would you like to add to this?
I think, yeah, thanks for covering this, Madhu. In fact, what I believe is I'll just, bring the discussion to a little other perspective. I think what happened in 2020, 21, 22, the ripples of that is what we're going to experience in 2023. And we've already started that, right? Let me just give you, a macro scenario of maybe what my thought process on what is it going to be there in 2023 when it comes to talent, as well as the other factors affecting the business, right? So 2023 definitely is going to be a testing year, because while you look at what happened in 2022 when we started dealing with Omicron variant, and economies actually struggling to balance how to handle that. There comes February, where Russia chooses to attack Ukraine, and the geopolitical imbalance actually starts to happen, right? So these are all macro factors, right? The demand supply imbalance has always remained in the market. Inflation, of course, in this year actually is rising and marching up. You could also look at factors like interest rates going up. So there are 100 other macroeconomic factors. But what needs to be considered in all of this is, from 2020 to where we are right now, the kind of talent dislocation that has happened because of all this, right? Whether you could call it pandemic, whether you could call it any other factors that has impacted our economies post this pandemic. The major phenomena that all the enterprises alike and business leaders alike experienced is the talent dislocation that happened. Primarily, why? Because there were mass job cuts that happened, in across the globe, right? Because people never knew how to deal with such a situation. The easiest target is people, right? So the cost is where, as Madhu said, cost consciousness is built into the business thread. So the job cuts happened. People moved out of their jobs, not knowing what to do, right? But when everything started reviving, say 2022, there was a acute shortage of talent, right? And of course, Madhu would agree to that. Attracting talent actually became, the largest mandate for any organization. Why? I think because talent chose to move to different, they tried and explored what could be, something different that they could do with, except what they were doing for the last 10, 15 years, right? So the alternatives came in, the dislocation started happening. People on the softer side started to choose and think about what they need to achieve in life. Very softer part, right? But that's what people, did. And this is the phenomena that made them thinking as to whether I really want to get into a full-time employment or not. There comes gig, there comes part-timers, there comes the whole bunch of people who are not permanently associated to your organization and enterprise, but of course contributing to the productivity, right? So the situation became, how should I say, it became very complex and intertwined. And the outlook was towards whether technology can help, whether HR has to restructure itself or approach the situation differently, for us to be catering to this kind of macro scenario that we are facing all across. The pressure on business to be conservative for the last 2 years actually was there. So there was impediment on the overall growth that the business could actually achieve. So there are various other things. It's actually a Pandora box if you actually open it up. But coming down on to what is the focus of discussion today is related to how all of this has affected the talent strategy or HR strategy for enterprises, right? So for me, I think attraction of talent has become difficult. Technology, of course, can solve it, and we're going to talk more about it. The whole point of job skill mismatch that is happening in the market. There was a time in the last 2 years where talent demanded 3 times, 4 times of what they were earning, in their erstwhile jobs, right? Why? The phenomena happened because, especially in IT sector, for example, there was a lot of pseudo demand that got created, that whenever everything settles down, there is going to be a huge demand that is going to be generated. So let us put the supply in place, but the things worked otherwise, right? So that's why you see massive job cuts happening in the IT sector, and of course you would have read about that as well. So there are other phenomena as well which are contributing. But coming down onto the baseline, I think this job skill mismatch is something that needs to be really catered to when it comes to talent market. And also, how do we really build an equation where all this diverse workforce comes into one foundation, one ground, and contributing to the overall productivity, right? Because gone are the days when corporate citizens used to bring the equations of productivity and connection to the enterprise at a very higher level. But yes, today is the day when, say, Madhu will have to actually also deal with a whole fleet of part timers. I don't know whether manufacturing does that or not, but yes, industry wide, cross industry, there are phenomena that are happening, which is bringing HR to think and reevaluate what should be the strategy when it comes to the policies, the processes that have been being followed, the technology that has to be implemented. The whole concept of moonlighting flashed only after we got away from pandemic. So there are 100 other things, but yes, I think this is what my top of the mind thought processes are. So it's important, and it has become imperative for HR as a function to rethink what the talent strategy should be and what they should be adopting in terms to enable that talent strategy in the enterprise. So that's a couple of or a couple of cents of mine on this in this thought process. So let's see how do we build on to this foundation that we've created. That's from my side, Jerry.
Thank you so much, Randeep. I think you really pulled the curtain back on the last 2 to 3 years, right? I think, and I really like the point where you emphasized on this uh, employee reflection, right? I think we've written about this also so much about how there is a purpose-driven
Right.
outlook to their careers, right? To their
Yeah.
jobs, to
Yeah.
find meaning, to find connection. I really think that is sort of informed their choices, and also it is building on the pressure for companies to think about how do you build meaning into their jobs, right?
Yeah. Right.
So thank you so much for sharing that, and also the job skills mismatch that you spoke about and how it's sort of accelerating change, and sort of reprioritizing HR priorities. So thank you for sharing that. Madhu, I'm coming to you with a question. Broadly, you spoke about this shift to EV, right, and how it's sort of informing some of your priorities in terms of infrastructure, rolling out new models as well, and how I'm sure it's also impacting how you're training your talent and how you're developing and retaining talent as well. But you also spoke about the cost competitiveness aspect of it. So, how are you balancing some of these new and emerging priorities, which are probably very long term, also, right? It's going to make a massive shift in the long term. So, how are you leveraging technology also to balance some of these priorities for yourself?
Yeah. See, actually, if you see, the role of HR has evolved over a period of time. Obviously, when we started off as HR professionals, HR was looked more as something like a mundane function where you're supposed to kind of take care of the regular operational activities. But today, I think HR plays a very important role as a business partner, and keeping the ears on the ground and really understanding some of the macroeconomic factors, as Randeep also said. Uh, uh, Keeping a close ears on the ground, not only inside, but also outside in terms of what is really happening in the market. And when I talk about market, obviously you told about EV, and today, if you see, most of the industries are actually facing the challenge of cross-industry movement of talent, because at maybe 4 years or 5 years, when we were in about 2015-16, we never knew that engineering services could be actually one of the a very good model for say developing prototypes or developing new products. But today, if you see, most of the companies, like say most of the predominant manufacturers, OE manufacturers, be it say Hyundai or Renault or name it. So most of them actually use engineering services to kind of develop their products and use their technical expertise in terms of leveraging their R&D. So obviously, when we talk about the shift from the way things are done, and also overall, if you see, as the industry is also moving towards a new EV and hybrid kind of models. Uh, See, our key focus is actually on two things. So, if you see me as a HR business partner, I'll be happy to say that 70% of my time actually I spend with the R&D leadership. So, in terms of, because obviously the technical and the R&D cannot be treated like any other function. So, in fact, that's where we lose talent, and that's something which is common across the industry. So, a lot of my time actually goes into rolling out policies or kind of working closely with the leadership in terms of say attracting good talents for sure, and more importantly retaining some of the trained resources, because we come from an industry which is very niche. So obviously when people leave, it kind of hits our business, and for the next person to come and run to speed, it takes time. So if you see, no, obviously when I spend a lot of time in terms of say R&D as a function, and kind of how R&D can support some of the new projects which comes up from the customers. So here I will want to emphasize that technology obviously plays a huge role, mainly in terms of supporting in two major pieces as far as HR is concerned. One, we talk about the employee experience, right from when an employee joins the organization, he takes care of his onboarding, his recruitment, everything. And then we talk about employee experience, engagement, his or her rewards and recognition. How actually a line manager kind of does this process on his own? How can technology actually enable it? So here I would like to maybe touch upon few points which we thought we are doing well. Is that we have something to where technology helps us in running our R&R program, where we kind of use technology, we kind of use a system, an application where the line manager kind of gives reward points for employees who are doing pretty well, and that can be redeemed over a period of time. So when we talk about Gen Z workforce, and we talk about dependency on HR, obviously technology plays a huge role in terms of making sure that these processes are run without HR support. So HR plays more of kind of a backbone to these things. And the second important piece which I would want to touch here is employee productivity. So employee productivity, obviously, yes, we spoke about cost, we spoke about competitiveness. So something which most of the companies actually track is the sales per employee, and building an agile organization structure. So some of the challenges which actually HR practitioners folks face through the time is that, one, while dealing with say blue collar workforce. So maybe my plant head will actually say that, okay, you know what, this month's demand is about say we are going to look at some 1.5 million pieces. So I would require about 350 manpower to execute that order. So me as a HR person, I will have to check. I mean, I'll have to obviously ratify whatever is being told. So something where HR technology actually plays a role here is that maybe once I feed the production volume and the variants which are required, so can it actually feed the production manpower which is required, and can it plan for the roster itself? So obviously we talk about a lot of challenges here also, because most of the companies in manufacturing, as Randeep also touched the point, is they operate at a very high flexibility. So about 60-70% are all contract workmen, and you have temps, and only 30-40% will be permanent workmen. So you will have a lot of turnover in those areas. And how do you kind of make the system very dynamic? So obviously here technology plays a very important role. And not only that, it has to be very seamless with some of the other your HRMS should be seamless with also the other systems, like say an ERP system like SAP, where there should be communication between these two systems as well. So and another point is that, again, when we talk about employee productivity and say white collar productivity, obviously the top management today questions every backfill. When we talk about say decreasing business volume, we want to make sure that we really need people. Say today we are at about say 6 or 7% employee cost as a percentage of sales. How do you bring it to 4% or 5%? So obviously the HR has to play the role of really supporting the business, but at the same time questioning some of the decisions which are taken. So I think here technology actually plays a very important role in terms of helping HR take very critical strategic decisions, be it say understanding workload, understanding job descriptions, understanding role requirements, understanding maybe some of the pain points of functional managers, and also scope for automation. That is one of the very key area where technology plays a very important role. So these are the broad areas where we are working in terms of employee experience, employee productivity. So yeah, that's my take on this. Yeah, thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Madhu. I really like the point that you mentioned where technology is just empowering the line manager, right? You give the example of how the rewards and recognition, how you're running it with a Gen Z employee, and the minimal HR interaction there, and it's just empowering the managers to, use technology to boost that employee experience. That's really great, I think, and also these examples that you shared on employee productivity with the blue collar workforce, I think that stands out, right? It really, you are sort of helping HR really take a step back and reflect on what are these areas we can improve, and work more closely with the top management as well. So that's great. I think these are great examples. Radeep, what are you observing from working with, I'm sure, multiple clients and partners as well?
Yeah.
How are you seeing this shift here?
See, there is of course an audience question that has also come. I'll pick that up later because that's very interesting question. But
Yeah.
just to build on to this, I think what we have seen in terms of me as a technology services provider, what we have seen as a shift happening in the systems that get implemented. I'll just talk about automation because I think most of it from the softer side, Madhu has covered it. From having system of records in early 70s 80s to moving to system of talent management to system of engagement to system of intelligence. The era right now is what experience and how do you really on a daily basis can converse with HR and get your issues or matters sorted out. So what we as technology services provider are moving into is what we call as conversational based HR and the experience that gets generated out of it. A small example of how you look at enhancing productivity, which is indirectly related, is today we have launched a service on WhatsApp where you don't need to log into an HRS system and all your queries are answered by WhatsApp bot. For example, I could be applying leave, I could be doing my major transaction that pulls me down into my the kind of time that gets consumed into interacting with HR onto a bot which is WhatsApp enabled. Number one. Number two, technology is not just solving the equation or the experience that the employee is expecting. I think with the kind of shift that has happened in the last 2 3 years, the CEO problem of how do we hit productivity and reduce cost also is something that HR technology is now catering to. A small case point that I would want to share is that one of the largest manufacturing component manufacturing organization which is related to automotive sector, Madhu, what we have done for them is we've solved the CEO problem where he came to us saying that while you have done a vanilla leave and attendance management for my organization, how could this help me in productivity, right? So how do you solve this? He said that due to unplanned absenteeism, I am having a productivity loss of close to 5 to 6%. Can you plug this for me? So what we did for them was built a case, which is now, of course, Lighthouse certified, also presented in World Economic Forum. Is that we gave them early information system on absenteeism. Madhu, this will you will connect to this very well. So in an operating line, which is very skill intensive, if you have got absenteeism which is unplanned, it directly hits onto your cost as well as productivity, right? So how do you get early information of who is going to be absent? And can the system through artificial intelligence give you skill based replacement to man that position which is absent, right? So that directly is impacting and empowering the line supervisor to the plant head as well as to what is the possibility that the system can generate. So I have a line-based skill matching. I have got algorithm which will actually see who are the people in the previous shift, next shift, and will give auto replacement to line operators for them to choose whether they would want to work with this kind of skill or not. Alternative skills, primary skills. So all that situation, if it is not cited to technology, and I always say in my talks is that technology as a result or outcome is a reflection of the processes that you would want it to cater to. As simple as that. If you don't bring problems to technology, you will not get solution. So what we solved for this organization was a typical productivity loss of 5 to 6%, which came through unplanned absenteeism. Number two, the experience part of employees, which Madhu touched upon. Given the kind of scarcity that we have for talent in the market today, how do you build a relationship even before a candidate is deciding to work with your organization or not, is something that the technology enables, right? So we talk about CRM, which is candidate relationship management. How do you bring your brand visibility to candidates large in the enterprise, or of course, sorry, in the ecosystem, for you to build that brand image? Can technology enable that or not? So it is about building that brand, employer brand, attracting the talent, nurturing the talent, enhancing talent in terms of their productivity, and sustaining that productivity is something that technology can actually solve from through and through as a value chain. So that's what I believe, and we've always been doing this kind of work, cutting edge work with organizations. So and empowering leaders like Madhu as well as the CEOs of the organizations to connect parallelly onto cost factor as well, and then onto productivity. I'll just take the question that came from audience. I'll parallelly answer it because otherwise it will be a huge backlog. How do you make a business case for HR investment when there is a lot of uncertainty in the market right now? A lovely question. So if you were to look at the total cost of ownership, that you are going to propose to the management for the investment that you're actually going to make in technology or processes otherwise, it will give you a clear idea on what is the returns that you can expect, right? A decreasing total cost of ownership and increasing ROI is an indicator that you will need to build when you're proposing an investment to your organization. And this could be based on what your industry is, based on what you would want to transform in your organization. So there are various other factors that contributes to building this equation, which will help you sell the HR investment. In times of uncertainties, investment on talent, investment on technology that enables talent and its productivity, reduction of cost when it comes to the overall talent cost as well, and also monitoring the budgets that you've actually created is a very good use case that you can build for HR investment, right? The whole experience part, when I say you're dealing with gig workforce as well, you have diverse workforce. How do you bring all of them onto one experience platform and make sure that the productivity expectation from this set of diverse workforce is met with, is something that can help you build a very good use case into HR investment. Also, depending upon, as I said, what are your priorities that you would want to transform in your function and enterprise otherwise, which will help you build this case, right? So that's my answer to question one. I don't know if Madhu has perspective on this. He could add on to that, because now we have started to get questions as well.
Yeah,
So that's my part, Jerry, that I
Yeah.
wanted to share on top of what Madhu shared. Yeah.
I think just one point I'll add here is that Randeep, I think your what you said was 100% correct, and maybe I feel that that person is from the functional side. So maybe from the functional side, if I could add just 2 points. One is for sure when we are bringing a change in the organization, for sure the key point is buy-in. Okay, we need to kind of build the trust with the management, and also like Randeep said, you should be able to present the output and clearly give a metric in terms of what is the end result going to be. And second point for sure, which works, I mean, for us here, and also when I in fact talk with some of the HR folks, is that scalability. So for sure, when we talk about say investment in HR technology, whether it's actually scalable to say multi-plant operation, or say multi-location operation, or even a diverse workforce. So I think that scalability is a very important factor in terms of what problem the investment could solve. And yes, second, as I said, buying is a very important point.
Great tips. I think a lot of ideas there. I think right from monitoring budgets, presenting the output, build the trust with the management, scalability. A lot of points to reflect on. Thank you so much for sharing that, Madhu. I think both of you have spoken about different examples of productivity, right? I think Randeep, you shared how this information for early absenteeism sort of and sort of monitoring that and also replacing that skill talent sort of boosts the output. I think we had similar reflections from Madhu as well. Madhu, what are some challenges you're encountering in this journey? what and how are you mitigating some of these challenges also when you think about accelerating productivity? I'm sure technology is giving you that data and information and insight, but could you also reflect on some of the challenges along the way?
Yeah. Actually, from the functional side, if you see, HR has to kind of make sure that the business runs, and make sure that we have talent on the ground. We kind of attract good talents. We make sure that people are productive, positions are filled. Yeah, it has to be done. But also, I think, in fact, it kind of, if I could also combinedly answer the question which the second question asks. If you see some of the challenges or some of the key focus areas for HR leadership at the moment is, again, I think, the in the current scenario, uh, driving a agile organization structure. Okay, how do you actually prepare a structure? And when I say structure, is I don't mean say the current structure, kind of building a robust organization structure for the future of the organization. Like as we speak today, for sure there are so many macro level industry dynamics which keeps changing, and we have a lot of disruptions which happen. We spoke about that in the first part. So I think, when we talk about building an agile structure for the future, and kind of make the organization ready, and make it more system and process dependent. Today, if you see, when we talk about, say, auto component industry, I can't help but surely touch upon the supply chain. Supply chain is one of the key challenges, in fact, most of the auto component companies face. Because if you see, as the customers expect the JIT, just in time delivery of components on a daily basis, for sure, if you see the tier 2 and a tier 3 supplier, they face a lot of challenges in terms of, say, even availability of manpower, availability of raw materials. And for sure, we have just recovered from COVID. And on the other side, in fact, if you see, there is sheer shortage of people who could actually run machines, who could actually work in the shop floor. That is actually one of the very key challenge, in fact, most of the HR folks are facing today. Because today, if you see, I mean, gone are the days where a permanent workman, okay, who's actually part of the organization, who has a lot of pride in working for the organization, retiring from the company and all that. But today, if you see, obviously we have the gig workforce, we have Gen Z coming. And moonlighting is actually a challenge, in fact, in the automobile industry as well. Because people actually, if you see, most of our operators, they have a business of their own. They put a lot of time and effort in that. And we can't expect them to actually kind of make sure that they are present every day to make sure that customer requirements are met. So obviously there are a lot of challenges which actually comes, and every day is something new, and every day a lot of new things come up. So I think the focus for HR leadership is, one side, if you see, if I can tell like this. So we obviously have the white collar workforce, where the focus area is on driving productivity, driving superior employee experience, making sure that we retain the top 20 or top 25% of our talent. And where you have industries who are actually poaching talent from good companies. So, and also making sure that the CEO's expectation of driving productivity, driving continuous productivity, and making sure that we kind of balance the leadership requirement, at the same time the overall organization requirement as well. And the second point, as I said, the key point that the HR leadership is focusing on right now is kind of building a stable workforce at the shop floor level or at the ground level, where you don't find uncertainties. Like also Randeep said, how in fact HR technology can kind of predict our absenteeism over a period of time, and we make sure that we are kind of ahead of the curve, and keep the manpower readily available, to make sure that you don't counter this unauthorized or some kind of unexpected absenteeism. So I think that is those are broadly the key priorities which HR folks are facing. and they are kind of mitigating. Obviously, technology is playing a huge role in terms of leveraging this, supporting HR leadership and the CEOs in terms of helping take better decisions, and also supporting these processes. Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing that, Madhu. I think all of the points that you mentioned, I think it encapsulates this idea of the agile organization that you need to be ready for. I think that summarizes it really well. Randeep, what would you like to add to some of these challenge or focus areas that you're seeing?
Um, I would say there is also a larger challenge in the market that I experience, when I meet industry leaders as well as HR leaders is, uh, the focus on solving the wrong problem, right? So I think the biggest challenge is what is the problem that we are trying to solve. I think connecting to that problem and looking for relevant solutions is something that is a little bit of gap in the market. So I think that becomes very important, and from a service provider perspective, I see that challenge in enterprises alike, because you tend to get to attract to what other organizations are doing. Let me also try and do that. Whether that works for me or not, is not guaranteed. So for me, that's a big challenge, and catering to that section of enterprises becomes very difficult, because then the finger pointing onto technology or the kind of change that you're trying to bring in becomes very obvious, right? So that's one part. The other challenge is, of course, that I see is that, which is also related to second question, is that of course experience for employee is the key prerogative, and the key focus area that everyone is driving today. But how many leaders do actually have insights to watch the experience on ground of employees on a daily basis? That's a challenge, right? So while I would want to drive experience, but do I have some actionable insights as an employee journey is progressing in an organization, for me as an HR leader to be taking certain actions which will contribute or enhance that experience, what we typically call them as moments that matter, right? So am I conscious of moments that matter in the overall life cycle that I'm trying to manage for employees? And do I have the right tools and insights generation engine for me to be taking actions, at an appropriate time? So, for example, a challenge is today, technology not giving an intelligent nudge to a manager or an HR leader. Why don't you look into this issue, right? For example, we solve this as well in our technology. So, what about intelligent nudges on onboarding? So and so is joining, your team. Would you like me to block your calendar for 30 minutes for a coffee meeting or not? Now, these are certain moments that really matter, which technology, of course, can solve. But I think someone has to have the vision to see the overall value that you would need to deliver in the experience quotient that you're trying to create in an enterprise. So I see that as a challenge. So the applicability of technology today is humongous. It's in all the areas that you can think of. But the challenge that I see is leaders not having visibility of that, or at the right point in time to take actions which will really contribute to the overall experience, productivity, performance, whatever you would want to call them, call this, is something that's what I believe is a challenge. So lack of data, consolidation of data, interpretation of data, drawing intelligence out of the events that are happening across. We have been creating a lot of data in the last 15-20 years. It's now the time to be sitting on that data, drawing some intelligent, actionable insights from them, and then changing the way we've been operating in the past. So that's my take on this, Jerry. To add on to what Madhu said.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing that, Randeep. I think it's really a call to for the leadership itself to understand that experience, what that experience is looking like, right? And I think the data and insight also needs to complement whether you are really solving for the right challenge or not. And I think the role of intelligent nudges also to sort of prod you in that right direction. I think all of that is really helpful. We'll move to one final question before we take on more audience questions. So when you think about this mandated redesign work, which has new expectations from the workforce, what are you thinking about, right? So from an expectation, or we've spoken a lot about experience also of the employees and how we need to be closely aligned to that entire life cycle and moments of truth, right? So if you were to think about the mandatory design work for experience, what are your top reflections? Madhu, would you like to start first?
Yeah, actually, if you see, like if we have to say redesign the way things are done, or say how do we actually look at the future, or how does the role of HR business partner support leadership in terms of meeting the expectations and driving the business? I think like one key point is that no, if you see most of the HR practitioners, we focus a lot on having standalone systems, and this is something where we work very closely with our partners, and I'm sure Randeep will agree, is that have a kind of seamless integrated technology to support the entire employee life cycle. I think that is one of the key challenges which HR faces. But at the same time, I think as we evolve, I mean, most of the technologies today, if you see, they kind of support and they kind of interact with the other subsystems as well. So I think how do we? Because no, end of the day, if you see, as Randeep also said, how do we actually? How does technology support leaders by kind of giving intelligent data and nudging them to take the right decisions at the right time? So I think the key point here is that the we because to give you actually a real time example, today we have a SAP system for say running our finance and cost module. Our production planning and supply chain module runs on SAP, but we don't have a HRMS system which is on SAP. We have it on some other platform. So yeah, today if you see, we do have challenges in terms of how does one system communicate with other. So yes, we are working on a roadmap to make sure that all these systems kind of talk to each other, and this does not act as a pain point, because if you see end of the day, the line manager kind of loses trust on the system if he has to actually refer to multiple areas where he has to actually check data, take decisions and things like that. So we are, while we talk about employee experience, at the same time I think leaders also need to have access to data which comes from different systems, but at the same time kind of giving it in a way that they are able to quickly take decisions, and does not depend on HR to kind of make decisions or things like that. So that is a key point. And again, like I said, uh, how do we actually build that productivity piece? And while I talk about productivity, I think HR has a very important role as HR leadership. Is that leaders kind of expect the productivity to be driven kind of from the functions and supported by HR. So for sure, HR kind of becomes a sandwich between the functions and the leadership. So how do we make sure that we kind of have a win-win conversation between the functional leadership and also the leadership? And this is where actually, like I said earlier, also technology plays a very important role in terms of how do we get very transparent data where your functional leaders kind of know that okay, this is the hard fact. Okay, we should actually look at this data, or we may have because if you see, we may have some positions which are kind of been there for a long period of time. Okay, so me as a functional manager, I don't want to let go of that position. Okay, maybe even if the position is only about 40% 50% loaded, I would maybe want to have that position. So here, this is where I think technology plays a huge role. How do we measure the workload of each position? How do we kind of understand job descriptions, and how do we actually understand in reality what that position actually delivers? So this is where actually we are trying to work with some of the partners in terms of understanding how the output is measured, how workload is measured, and that's when we kind of drive an agile organization.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing that, Madhu. Right from seamless integration to really measuring the understanding in reality, I think that's really helpful. Randeep, anything else you'd like to add to this mandate of redesigning work?
I think flexibility is the key. How do you bring in flexibility into the workplace today? Because you're dealing with diverse workforce, different expectations. How do you meet expectations? How do you create that flexibility? Is something that's very important. Redesigning. I think more from the workplace redesigning, it is more about redesigning what we have been doing for the last 5-10 years in terms of our processes, in terms of our policies, in terms of the way we have looked at talent is something that is important. So it's not just redesigning. So when we say redesigning workplace, it's a very broader term. It's the redesign thought process that we'll need to bring in terms of how do we deal with talent or the situation in business. Like no one had a business continuity plan when the pandemic struck us, right? So people evolved. The whole redesign equation came after we were, somewhere down in 2020 in the month of November, December, where things started to pick up, right? So that's where the thought came from. I think it's more about being agile, being flexible, being open to and sensitive to what is happening across. So the limits have or the boundaries have just shrunk. Someone is asking question on metaverse and some very interesting questions. I'll of course would want to answer them as well. So the boundaries have shrunk, and in this limitation, or say in this wide scope that we've got, how do we really operate as one unified organization is something that needs to be thought through. The technology invasion is going to happen in a big way. The way we are looking at technology today, maybe what we're looking at while we're sitting at the same time frame next year will be very different. Maybe we are meeting in metaverse, right? So you never know. But yes, there is a redesigning that needs to happen more from a thought perspective, than anything else. Bringing in flexibility, agility in what we are doing, and open to change is something that I would want to comment in a very short way, keeping in mind the time that we have at hand. Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Randeep, for sharing that. I think that's really useful. So now, I think we've already answered a couple of questions. So let me jump to the third question. How do
Yeah.
we improve our
Interesting.
offer to join ratio considering the current situation? Are there any best practices that you'd want to recommend?
I'll take
Uh,
this up. I think it's a very interesting question. This has always been a challenge, with HR or recruiters for that matter, because you're held accountable for offer to joining KPI when a dashboard is published to an HR leader or business leader. What we have done in terms of enabling enterprises to cater to this situation is one, as I've already shared, how do you get on to a candidate relationship management equation, right? So, how do you build it? Even before you've offered or floated the offer, right? So, what we do beautifully in our technology is create virtual chat rooms for candidates with HR. We actually give a specific page in our social collaboration platform that we have, to candidates for them to actually come and share their ideas. Of course, it is administrator controlled, but you get a sense of what the enterprise that you're going to join in is going to offer, right? So if you bring that experience 2 steps before a person actually is joining the organization, that really helps you enhance or creates a very healthy ratio of offer to joining. Number two, from a transformation perspective, what you could also do is look at certain predictives given the history of your organization and the kind of candidates you have been attracting, predicting the possibility of an individual joining this organization or not. We are doing that predictive. So today, the possibility or probability of a candidate joining is a predictive that is well established in technology. But of course, that calls for a lot of data that we'll need to churn from your systems to actually give you a prediction. If the prediction is falling a certain percentage, you could actually take corrective actions well in advance, right? So that's the beauty of predictive. So these are the two things that I could, actually suggest. And of course, the way you've branded yourself, you've marketed yourself, the way you've created employment, your employer brand is something that also contributes to the overall offer to joining ratio. But these are certain tech practices, best practices that you could evolve, which are very well established, right, and gives you very good results, which will help you to make this offer to joining ratio very healthy.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Madhu, anything you would like to add, or will?
I think what Randeep said was 100% correct. And maybe one point, if I would like to add more from functional perspective, is that what we have done, in fact, what most of the organizations are doing now also is creating a kind of culture of collective ownership for making sure that the candidate is onboarded on time. I think this is where I think, as Randeep said, no, technology plays a huge role in terms of creating that engagement with the candidate even before the person comes on board. So it's not only the engagement with the HR or the recruiter, but also with the line manager, with the leadership. Because end of the day, the candidate is joining the organization, but also more importantly, what kind of engagement he has with the manager. I think this is where I think, as Randeep rightly said, technology plays a huge role in creating that collective ownership, creating that engagement with the recruiter, and giving out predictive analytics data, and I think that's where the change has happened.
Absolutely, absolutely. So there's a question on supply chain resilience and labor shortage as a challenge area. I think Madhu you touched a little bit on this. Uh,
Yeah,
you want to address
I
it?
think uh, actually, there, very honestly speaking, no, this is a challenge which is there, which was there, which is there, and which will also continue to be there. Because today, if we see, our dependence on labor is very high, and this is where actually most of the organizations, if you see, they invest a lot on low cost automation and kind of making sure that you automate some of the process. Like for example, if you see any manufacturing company, you will have a machining and the assembly. Okay, you kind of buy raw materials, you machine the product, and then you then assemble the product and deliver to the customer. So most, if you see, with supply chain being strained, and there's a lot of labor shortage obviously in tier 2, tier 3 level. uh, Most of the companies actually, if you see, we as even HR folks, we kind of work with some of the suppliers to make sure that we train them, we kind of skill them over a period of time, and make sure that how can we automate their process and reduce the dependency on labor. That is one of the key factor. But while I say that, it's actually not a very easy challenge, easy problem to solve, because you have investment when we talk about automation, whether we kind of get the payback. Because if you see today automobile industry, as I think the person will know, whenever we actually work with a supplier, the tooling is actually taken care by the customer. So when I invest on the supplier, I would want to make sure that the supply is kind of consistent, and kind of make sure that we don't face any challenges or any sudden disruption or anything like that. But broadly, if you see, the areas which we work on is kind of make sure that we automate the process. We continuously work with suppliers in terms of skilling them and reducing the dependency on labor. But yes, this is going to stay. This is surely going to stay. It's not a very easy problem to solve.
Absolutely. Great. So we'll address one last question. How would emerging technologies like VR and AR and metaverse impact HR, in specifics to employee engagement and learning and development? Randeep, would you like to take this?
Yeah, I'll take this up. Very interesting. Actually, I was, in a CII, conference where I spoke on metaverse, and I was talking on a very different tangent to metaverse. So AR, VR, of course, has been already into learning and development space. It's not new to us. But I think metaverse is new. It will tend to remain new for the next couple of years. Why? Because there are various challenges that we first, as economies, need to cross for metaverse to be successful for us. One, of course, is my digital identity being unified onto a global platform. For example, today I have a digital identity in Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. These are distinct entities, and people are not willing to let go of one identity onto another platform, right? So for me to utilize metaverse completely, I'll come on to HR. I need to, as a world, first evolve onto a platform where I have one digital identity that moves across the world. Number one. Number two, there has to be a digital token currency that has to be created at a global level. Crypto is coming clearly, close to it, but there is going to be an evolution, there as well. So we are still far away from the practical application of metaverse, though organizations or technology solutions have started providing, say, an onboarding experience using metaverse. But I would say that's not really metaverse. It's still at a very nascent stage, right? We are talking about a lot of concepts which are built on metaverse or multiverse or so many things coming up, but we are still far away from leveraging what metaverse can give us. Now, coming on to the first question that someone asked was, how do I justify my investment into HR in this turbulent time? Now, believe you me, if you are gonna pitch in for metaverse to your management in bringing onboarding experience, it will be thoroughly rejected and quashed because it is a very high investment technology, right? You need to have AR, VR headsets for every person who is going to be onboarded. You're going to create that infrastructure. You need bandwidth for that. You need technology like 5G to be, rolled out to every individual. So there are a whole lot of dimensions to this. But to answer your question, yes, in the coming couple of years, you will see these technologies emerging. AR, VR already is there in L&D space, but from an employee engagement space, we are still far away when it comes to bringing at the last person standing a technology like metaverse, right? So it is. I'll just conclude. I know we are falling short on time. I'll just conclude. Of course, this will become a very key part in one of the concepts that I've always been propagating. Bring your own experience, and HR has to deliver, right? So it is BYOE, which is going to come into picture in the next couple of years. Metaverse will form a very clear part of that going forward. That's it from my side in terms of answering this question. Madhu, on to you. Yep.
Yeah, I think Randeep has very nicely summed up the point. Well, one point is that maybe the VR and AR is something where we are actually kind of leveraging. Because if you see most of the companies from the automobile space, you have a lot of content. You have a lot of training content, especially in L&D area, where you have classroom trainings like skill-based training, product training, which happens on a face-to-face basis. So obviously, we work with companies who are kind of replicating this model on a VR and a AR platform, and making sure that if you see our sales force sitting in, say, Bihar or somebody, can do this kind of L&D intervention on a VR or AR, like Randeep said, or Google Glass or something like that. Obviously, this is something we are working on, and we have rolled out few modules. But yeah, as we said, we are just starting off, and I'm sure that this area is something which will take up, and it's going to enable HR to drive business in a very strategic way.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Madhu and Randeep, for all the insights and a lot of key takeaways. And I think you've answered all the audience questions really well. So thank you so much for it. I personally took a lot of notes as well. We really appreciate this time that you've shared. I'd also like to extend our gratitude to our partner for this session, HONO.ai. They're an HCM platform that addresses, simplifies, and humanizes end-to-end HR processes. You can visit their website at www.hono.ai. So, in the interest of time, we'll have to wrap up this session right now. It's been a pleasure hosting all of you. Should you have any further questions, do send it. We will probably have our speakers answer them offline. And yeah, look forward to more such exciting virtual sessions. Thank you, everyone, and have a great day.
Thank you. Thank you, Jerry, for being a wonderful host. Thank you. Thanks, Madhu.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you, Jerry. Thank you, Randeep.
Thank you.
Thank you.